Democrats have made it very clear they plan to put Joe Biden in the White House in January, whether he wins the election or not. Watch.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Another angry rich lady. Boy, there are a lot of those around. Well, today, Jeff Bezos' personal newspaper, The Washington Post, reported that violence is likely if Joe Biden doesn't win. But of course not predicted if he does win, which tells you everything. And according to the Boston Globe, Biden's surrogate John Podesta has been planning for the possibility that Biden won't concede and that the military will get involved and make sure he's president. It's hard to believe anyone would say that out loud, but people are saying that out loud. So what is going to happen in November? Well, Vince Coglianese has gamed it out. He's a radio show host at WMAL in Washington and an editor at the Daily Caller. We're happy to have him on tonight. Vince, thanks so much for coming on. So what do you think, what are the scenarios? What's likely to happen when Election Day comes?
Well, as you know, politics is typically very hard to predict. This one is not hard to predict at all. This Election Day is setting up to be a dumpster fire, and an unquenchable one, actually. You know, a lot of people think back to the chaos of the 2000 election, pregnant chads, hanging chads, looking at ballots in Florida, thinking, boy, I hope that never happens again. I'm sorry, that is a maskless walk in the park compared to what we're about to experience. And what I mean by that is, this year, experts predict that upwards of 156 million Americans will cast a ballot in the presidential election. That's a huge number. And some 80 million of those will be cast by mail. This is unprecedented. We are overhauling our election system this year in a way that is really meaningful in one of the most fraught political environments that anyone has seen who's alive today. So in order to do that, does the mail system work? Well, there are a lot of question marks about that, especially because we've had so many primaries this year already. And look at what happened in Nevada, in Pennsylvania, in New York, where 84,000 ballots were just disappeared. That was 1 out of every 4 voters not counted for. They were rejected in New York. How could you have a system where a single battleground state is in question because of a lapse like that? That is going to be a disaster.
My sense is that Democrats plan to win this election in the weeks after Election Day with lawyers. So if it's a contest between the parties on the question of who's got more lawyers, the Democrats obviously have a massive advantage. It's the party of lawyers. Do you get the feeling that's their program?
Yes, they have an army of lawyers and again, unquenchable desire to win. You heard it vocalized there by one of the most famous Democrats, Hillary Clinton, saying that under no circumstance should Joe Biden concede this election. John Podesta, as you mentioned, was her campaign chairman. The war game that they gamed out in June was essentially this, that come the election, he would refuse to concede, playing Joe Biden, and that he would challenge the results of the Electoral College. He would manipulate the actual electors to the Electoral College. And in their war game scenario, 3 states, Washington, Oregon, California, all 3 of the states on the Western Seaboard threatened to secede from the Union. And these are not fringe people. This is the center of the Democrat Party, John Podesta. That is a big deal. And they say they want to wait for the military at that point to figure out who's president of the United States. That was, by the way, a scenario where Joe Biden loses the election. It's a gigantic deal. So I think there really is only one solution to all of this. And it's we've got to get the polls open. We have very little time, but it is of immense importance that people vote in person. If Americans can't have confidence in their election system, the whole thing falls apart. We have such low trust in our institutions today at all levels, government, media, everywhere. If you lose faith in your election, that's how you become third world. Open up the polls. Congress can use its compulsory capabilities, threaten funding, force these states to reopen, whatever you have to do. Enfranchise every American voter you possibly can. Because right now, the state's governors are shutting down polls across the country, and it is safe to vote. Doctors Fauci and Dr. Birx, they say it's safe to get in line and cast a vote. Unless you're in that very vulnerable population, then go ahead, cast that mail-in ballot. But we need a lot of confidence in this election result, and we need it quickly.
I think that's a very, very smart point, and it's something that Republicans in Congress, not one of the sharpest groups in America, need to be reminded of. So thank you for reminding them of that.
Open the polls. Thank you. Thank you.
Open the polls. Amen.